There is a quiet mystery at the center of human life. Nearly everyone believes they wish to change. They make promises to themselves in moments of clarity. They imagine a future in which their habits are different, their reactions calmer, their direction more deliberate. And yet months pass, sometimes years, and the same patterns return. Habits reappear like old guests who never fully left the house. Reactions rise before thought can intervene. A person may wake one morning and realize that, despite sincere effort, the shape of their life resembles yesterday far more than tomorrow. This is so common that it is rarely questioned. People explain it with familiar phrases: lack of discipline, lack of willpower, lack of motivation. But if one observes carefully, this explanation begins to dissolve. There are many people who desire change with genuine sincerity. They read, they reflect, they analyze their lives with seriousness. And still the same invisible gravity pulls them back into familiar patterns. The question therefore deepens. Why do intelligent, thoughtful people remain governed by patterns they themselves can clearly recognize? To answer this honestly requires looking at something most people never examine. The problem is not simply behavior. The problem is the structure of the mind itself. Most individuals move through life inside a continuous flow of sensation, thought, and emotion, without realizing that these movements gradually assemble themselves into something larger. They form a structure. A sensation appears. The mind interprets it. An emotion follows. Then a narrative quietly forms explaining what that emotion must mean. That narrative becomes identity. And identity begins shaping the next experience that arrives. Thus, the loop closes. Understanding this structure is the beginning of everything that follows. And the work you are entering here explores that structure patiently, step by step. Let us descend so that we may rise. You have likely experienced this already. You decide that the next time an argument occurs, you will remain calm. The argument begins, and before you notice it, the old reaction has already taken control. Or you promise yourself that tomorrow you will begin again. Tomorrow arrives, and the same invisible gravity quietly pulls you back into the same decisions. This is not weakness. It is structure. It is pattern. The mind organizes experience through patterns that repeat themselves beneath awareness. Because these patterns remain unseen, they appear inevitable. A person believes they are reacting to the present moment. In truth, they are often responding to interpretations formed long before that moment arrived. Consider how quickly the mind converts experience into certainty. A moment of embarrassment becomes, "I am the kind of person who fails." A difficult conversation becomes, "People cannot be trusted." A passing disappointment becomes, "Things never work out for me." These conclusions feel immediate and convincing, yet they are rarely reality. They are interpretations resting upon earlier interpretations, layered slowly over time like paint covering a canvas. Each experience adds another stroke. Eventually, the layers become thick enough that the original surface disappears entirely. At that moment, something remarkable happens. The individual begins living inside the painting rather than observing the canvas. Perception itself becomes shaped by the identity those interpretations have created. And once identity begins filtering perception, every new experience quietly reinforces the pattern that produced it. This is why effort alone rarely produces change. Effort attempts to repaint the image, but the structure that produced the image remains untouched. Trying to change behavior without examining perception is like attempting to straighten a reflection in a mirror by adjusting the reflection itself. The effort may be sincere, but the direction is mistaken. Many systems of improvement unknowingly fall into this same trap. They attempt to control behavior without examining perception. Motivation pushes the reflection harder. Discipline attempts to polish the mirror. Advice suggests different reflections to imitate. But the structure that converts sensation into interpretation, interpretation into emotion, and emotion into identity remains unchanged. So the same reflection quietly returns. Not because the person lacks sincerity, because the architecture of the loop remains intact. And when this is first seen clearly, something unexpected occurs. The realization can feel unsettling. The mind prefers believing that effort alone determines our future. But if the structure of perception itself is shaping behavior, the matter becomes more intimate. Responsibility deepens. Yet hidden within this realization is an extraordinary form of hope. For if the mind creates the loop, then seeing the loop begins dissolving it. Consider a simple moment of irritation. Normally, the emotion appears and the mind immediately moves outward. It reacts. It justifies. It constructs explanations for why the feeling must be correct. But imagine something different occurs. Instead of reacting, the experience is observed. The tightening in the chest, the warmth rising in the face, the thought forming that explains why the reaction must be justified. For the first time, the sequence becomes visible. Sensation becomes thought. Thought becomes interpretation. Interpretation becomes identity. Identity prepares behavior. And when this sequence is seen clearly, something extraordinary begins to happen. Recognition introduces space. Most people attempt to control their thoughts. But thought is not the deepest movement of the mind. Beneath thought lies perception. And beneath perception lies identification. The real question is not, what am I thinking? The deeper question is, what part of me believes that thought is who I am? When this question becomes visible, the loop begins to loosen. The emotion may still rise, but the mind no longer assumes the emotion defines the self. A subtle distance appears between experience and identity. And within that distance, behavior becomes negotiable. This realization has appeared repeatedly across human history. Contemplatives noticed that sensations rise and fall like clouds passing through an open sky. Philosophers urged individuals to examine themselves before attempting to change the world. Mystics spoke of clearing the lens through which reality is perceived. Even the old alchemists described transformation through a strange instruction. First, dissolve what has hardened. Then something new may emerge. The languages differ, but the insight remains remarkably consistent. The problem is not experience. The problem is unconscious attachment to interpretations we mistake for ourselves. Once those interpretations are observed clearly, their authority begins to soften. If this observation continues long enough, something even more interesting begins to appear. A person starts to notice that thoughts, emotions, and identities are not the only patterns organizing experience. There are deeper movements still. Structures that shape perception itself. But that discovery requires patience, and we will approach it in time. For now, it is enough to recognize the first opening. Transformation rarely arrives through heroic effort. More often, it unfolds through quiet moments of recognition, repeated over time. A thought appears, it is noticed. An emotion arises, it is observed. A narrative begins forming, it is questioned. Each observation loosens the structure slightly. Gradually, the mind becomes less rigid. Emotion becomes less overwhelming. Identity becomes more flexible. Eventually, awareness stabilizes. Thought still appears. Emotion still moves through experience. But neither dominates perception. And in that quiet shift, something remarkable becomes possible. For the first time, the person responds rather than reacts. This is the quiet secret most people never discover. Change does not begin with behavior. It begins with perception. Once perception becomes clear, behavior reorganizes naturally. The individual who appears disciplined from the outside may not be forcing themselves forward at all. They have simply stopped being pulled backward. And that difference changes everything. Now I will speak to you directly. If you have followed this far, something within you already recognized the truth of what you have heard. Not because it was persuasive, because you have seen hints of it within your own experience. The patterns described here are not abstract philosophy. They are the architecture of the human mind. And the moment you begin observing them, the process of transformation has already begun. But this is only the threshold. In the work that follows, we will descend further. You will see how sensation, thought, and emotion assemble themselves into patterns of identity. You will see how to dissolve those patterns. And eventually, you will discover how a deeper coherence begins organizing the mind itself. When that clarity stabilizes, life begins to move differently. Not violently, not dramatically, but with the quiet certainty of something that has remembered its proper direction. If you are ready, continue with the next video.